Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Grand Slam Journey podcast, where I, together with my guests, discuss various topics related to finding purpose, maximizing our potential, sports, life after sports, and transitioning from one chapter of our lives to the next. My today's discussion is with Coach Agustin Moreno. Coach Moreno is currently the women's tennis head coach at LMU, and he's also the head coach of Mexico's Billie Jean King Cup team. If you enjoyed this episode, I want to ask you to please do two things. Please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcasting platform you use to listen to this episode. Please share this episode with someone you believe might enjoy it as well. I find it is a great way to let others know you are thinking about them, and I'm not going to lie, it will help me greatly. Coach Agustin Moreno was named the head coach of women's tennis program at LMU in 2015. During the short time, he has created and coached the team to achieving LMU tennis record results and conference placements. Most recently, Moreno guided his squad to a 17-6 overall record and a 7-2 mark in the WCC to earn a share of second place in the West Coast Conference standings. The second place finish in the WCC was the best since LMU placed second in 2006, while the 17 wins were the most since going 2010 in 1995. The Lions also went a perfect 10-0 from the LMU Tennis Center in Moreno's third season at the helm. Coach Moreno has vast coaching experience, leading teams and players to national tournaments and appearances, winning conferences, and gaining honors. Before joining Lions, Coach Moreno led the SFU team for 9+ seasons, guiding them to a pair of conference championships and 6 NCAA tournament appearances. He was also named the league's Coach of the Year in 2007. Before coaching at USF, Coach Moreno served as an assistant coach at the University of Georgia, where he helped recruit and develop players such as current ATP pro John Isner. Moreno's extensive coaching resume also includes a wealth of international experience guiding women's and men's programs such as Mexican Women's Federation Cup, which is now known as the Billie Jean King Cup, Mexico's Women's Continental Cup team, 18 and under squad, Women's Pan American team, and also on the men's side, the Mexican Davis Cup team, and the Mexican 14 and under World Youth Cup squad. Coach Moreno was a fantastic tennis player himself. He played one season at Pepperdine, earning a number 4 national ranking in doubles and helping the Waves to the national indoor title and an appearance in the NCAA championship title match. Before arriving at Pepperdine, he was ranked number 1 in the world in doubles as a junior, and was the doubles champion at Junior Wimbledon in 1985. Coach Moreno enjoyed a successful professional career on the ATP Tour, which spanned from 1987 to 1994. He was a doubles semifinalist at the 1988 French Open and also participated in the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Korea. Moreno was a member of Mexico's Davis Cup team and owns career wins over Thomas Muster and Petr Korda. This episode is fantastic for true tennis enthusiasts. We discuss Agustin's journey to tennis growing up in Guadalajara, Mexico, his juniors tennis, deciding to join Pepperdine, and then his decision to go play the tour, achieving ranking of 120 in the world in singles and 40 in doubles, and then his decision to go back to TCU to gain his education that led him to becoming a college tennis coach. We talk about his career at TCU, University of Georgia, USF, and most recently at LMU, specializing in coaching women's tennis and the mental aspect of the game, developing teams and players, NCAA tournament appearances, and conference wins. We talk quite a bit about college recruiting and the importance of choosing the right college and coach to develop your tennis game. We discuss how to navigate difficult life and tennis situations, adaptability, life transitions, happiness, and regrets. We talk about LMU's fantastic tennis season, some key wins, such as LMU defeating UCLA for the first time in the history at their home courts. And last but not least, Coach Moreno being nominated and receiving the Salón de la Fama del Tenis Mexicano, the Hall of Fame award in Mexico, as the best captain of a national squad, coaching the Billie Jean King Cup. I want to explain a little bit before you listen to this episode and talk about regrets. One of the reasons how I know Coach Moreno was because he was giving me an opportunity to transfer to USF when I was looking for a potential new home for me after my freshman year in college. I have to say, this decision, or perhaps lack of decision, me not taking the opportunity, has haunted me for many years. I believe I have 2 regrets in life, and this regret was one of them. I recently listened to a talk from Daniel Pink, who wrote the book The Power of Regret. One of the things that really resonated with me from his research about regret is that Daniel claims that regrets are very healthy and they can actually tell us about what we value in life. From Daniel's perspective, the regret that sounds like, if only I had taken the chance, belongs to the category of boldness and reveals humans' need for growth. I find Daniel's research very interesting and personally accurate. I have to say that this regret has taught me that no matter what and no matter how scared you might be, one of the most important things is taking opportunities and accepting them no matter how scary they might seem to you at that point in time. And so this lesson has helped me in the following chapters of my life, and I have certainly learned from it. And I will forever wonder how my tennis game could have developed if I had accepted this opportunity. Lastly, please see the episode notes for links and resources on how to get in touch with Coach Moreno. And now, enjoy the listen. Hello, Coach. Welcome to the Grand Slam Journey podcast. How are you?
Fine, Clara. Nice to see you again.
Yes, it's been a while, and I appreciate you creating time. I know you have been juggling a lot of exciting things lately, and so I'm super happy to dive into tennis and all of your tennis journey and coaching with you.
Perfect. Thank you. Haven't seen you in... I remember I recruited you when I was at South Florida.
Yes.
And you were going to transfer, but at the end, I don't know what happened, but it didn't work out, but it's fine.
Yeah. And, it's one of the regrets I still have up until today. And even more so as I've been going through all of your wins and, exciting career you have had yourself in coaching. Definitely open to share more, but yes, I do regret not taking that opportunity.
We would have loved to have you in University of South Florida when I was there. So it almost happened, but
yes,
but for some way it didn't, but it's fine.
Well, I'm always interested about tennis, and the more guests I interview, the more I realize I have so many amazing friends from different countries and places. And so I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit more about your upbringing. How is it to grow up in Guadalajara, Mexico, and what brought you to tennis to begin with?
Well, it was kind of weird. My father was a professional soccer player from Chivas of Guadalajara, which is the only team that only has Mexican people, and it was the most successful soccer team that existed he played in the 50s and 60s. I was playing soccer all my life. Actually, the club that we belonged to was a soccer club. Is where Pelé and Brazil practiced in the World Cup 1970.
Wow.
And it was a soccer club that had tennis courts. They had only four at the time. They were four clay courts. They were beautiful. I mean, and I used to play. I took soccer seriously, but I would eventually go and play in the clay courts. Just like another sport. Just do a game with my friends. Never took a lesson. And this person, we're from a high altitude. Guadalajara is a little bit of high altitude. It's like a mile up. Kind of like Denver. And there was this person that had a factory of tennis balls, and he was developing a high altitude ball, kind of like a Tretorn in Sweden. So he used me as a guinea pig, and I used to just hit balls, and I started liking. So he invited me to play a tournament club, like inter club with another club. And so I played there, and I did well. And I started playing then state tournaments, national tournaments. And at the time in Mexico, I was doing two sports, and we had a sponsorship from Pepsi Cola, which if you were in the top four, you would go in the summer to play tournaments in the U.S. And it was the U.S. national tournaments. And also the Orange Bowl, and at the time it was another tournament called the Sugar Bowl that was in New Orleans. And so tennis was already in Mexico. I was getting free traveling, because I was in the top two in Mexico, and so that's how it started. And I decided to leave soccer. My dad kind of regretted because he used to own that league of little kids. And so that, I just started playing tennis instead of little by little, I just left soccer, So because in soccer, you are a team, you're not individually. I would just play around, around the city of Guadalajara and never outside of Guadalajara. And in tennis, I was already traveling when I was 11, 12. So around the world, I just decided to leave soccer and play tennis.
Wow. How did that conversation go with your dad at that point? That must have been really hard for him.
When I won that my first state tournament, I won it, And then I didn't win my first national, but I got to be I won several national tournaments already when I was 12. So once I went for free to play in the U.S. the whole summer and in the Orange Bowl and that, and actually I got in the Orange Bowl, my first Orange Bowl, I got 5th place, which is like,
wow.
If you were in the quarterfinals, you could still play consolation. And there was a spot, everybody in the quarterfinals would play it until the end. It was called feeding consolation. I don't know if you've heard about those draws that were made. I lost in the quarterfinal of the Orange Bowl, or maybe round of 16s. I don't remember which round, but I won the consolation. So it was the 5th place. That was considered the most important tournament in the world. So I decided just to play, play tennis, and my dad was fine. I had maybe a spot nationally and maybe a spot kind of like internationally. And I didn't have a spot in soccer. I was just a midfielder in the team that I played in my club.
Got it. So it seems like tennis was a sport that suited you better, perhaps from personality, and you had opportunities to travel, and really was something that you were slightly more successful in than in soccer. Is that fair to say?
Yes, soccer is hard to know because when you're young, you don't really know. I mean, you could be the best in your team, but you don't know how because there's no rankings, like, okay, what number are you in 12 and under? And, because you played also, exactly your ranking in your state, in your country, somehow internationally you have a ranking, So I knew that at least I had a better chance of being a tennis player than a soccer player.
Yeah. I also have to ask this question because I haven't talked to a guest who actually grew up in an altitude as a home. And, just traveling around and doing some hiking and experiencing the altitude, especially I was in La Paz, Bolivia. And when you land there, I was embarrassed because I was walking up the hill and couldn't breathe after 4 steps. And this 80-year-old lady, passed me by like nothing. I just felt so out of shape.
Yeah.
And so I always wondered if the people who grew up in a higher altitude, if there is potentially some predisposition, even physically, that allows them to then perhaps use some of that talent, or because you're training in the harsh conditions, then when you come in the lower altitude, it becomes a little bit easier for you to play and compete. Did you have that experience, or what are your thoughts?
Your lungs, I think, expand a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You can always physically work hard in high altitude.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure that old lady in La Paz had coca leaf. It's not cocaine, but it's coca leaf that make you breathe. You can have a tea
Yes.
of cocaine. I mean, and obviously in Guadalajara, it wasn't that high like La Paz. I've been in La Paz.
Yeah.
That's super high.
Yeah.
It's higher than Mexico City or Bogota and all that, but like,
yes.
it is a little, it helps you that, but stroke wise, it's something that is not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know how in tennis, when you play sea level, you have to hit a bigger swing, over there. I think it's really good for your volleys.
Yeah, because it's so much faster. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so much faster, and you learn to control it.
Mm-hmm.
The reactions.
Yes.
Obviously, the breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And but I don't think it's good to develop your tennis in high altitude because your strokes are always shorter. Because if you do a backswing, like you do in sea level or in the clay courts, in the slow clay courts, right. I mean that ball you would hit it late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's things that are good for it. Obviously, I think everybody who's good at 13, 14 then leaves the high altitude and trains sea level, So that's what happened to actually the same people that started sponsoring me to play in those. It was called Maestritos Pepsi. It was sponsored by Pepsi Cola. And those people sponsored me to go and live at Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy back then when I was 14. So that's another thing, I was already sponsored kind of like a scholarship in Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy when I was 14. So the bad thing about that, it ended up when I was 15.
What happened?
Well, I think the sponsor left. There was another president of the Tennis Federation, and the whole Pepsi thing ran out. A lot of things happen like that in Mexico. But, a lot of good tennis players came out of that. We had a very good tennis player back then also. And when I was a kid, he was one of the best in the world. His name was Raul Ramirez. Mm-hmm. He beat everybody. He was top 4 in the world in singles, and he always won doubles. He went to USC and then turned pro, I think, after 1 year. Then, so we had a good image about Raul Ramirez and the kids. He was one of the biggest stars in sports in Mexico and back then, or maybe it's the best tennis player we ever had. And then he also, when I was 15, 16, he quit the professional tour.
Got it.
Yeah.
How was it to actually train with Nick? I've heard stories about it.
I mean, obviously, he had a lot of kids. I got there, and afterwards, he gave me the scholarship. When Pepsi Cola stopped sponsoring us, I stayed there for a little longer. Mm-hmm. He was good. I think he's a great motivator. He's probably the best motivator there is in tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Tennis-wise, I would tell you that there's a lot of people that probably know more about technique and stuff like that. He learned it, but his big success was as a motivator, and also he's the first one that had a tennis academy, a worldwide tennis academy.
Yes.
And so maybe Hopman was also, it was him and Harry Hopman back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he had more kids, and he was a unbelievable business person and motivator. So I think that's his success, his real success.
But it didn't seem like you needed any motivation, coach. You were already a fantastic tennis player. It seemed like you were very focused at a young age, and you were amazing in juniors. You became the world number one after winning Wimbledon, and it seemed like you had a great juniors tennis career as well.
Yeah, well, I was good at juniors. I made the mistake, I think, that I started traveling a lot by myself. If you were ranked high in the juniors, in Italy and in those places, they gave you money.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, if you play, for example, a Group 3 or a Group 2 tournament, and you went there and they gave you kind of like appearance money, next year that one would go to be like a Group 1, depending on the players on the ranking that went there, So I played a lot when I was 16, 17, and I actually was doing kind of like online school, but it wasn't online. It was called correspondence school. And I wasn't going to school, and I was traveling by myself. There wasn't somebody watching me. I started liking to go out and all those things. When you say something that you regret, I regret back then that I wasn't doing the right things to be a professional tennis player.
If I remember correctly, right after you had really successful year in juniors in 1985, you then decided to go to Pepperdine and play on a team for them?
Yeah, I actually decided earlier. Alan Fox, the coach from Pepperdine back then, he recruited me in the Orange Bowl. I was playing Boris Becker in the semis.
Oh.
And he recruited me there. And that was the Orange Bowl 16s, not the 18s. And that was the biggest tournament in the 16.
Yes.
I won the doubles in that Orange Bowl, and I lost in the semis to Boris Becker. And so he offered me a scholarship in the future, and I said, okay, let me see what happens. And, and in 1984, after the summer, I decided I'm going to college. I'm going to Pepperdine. I had offers like at USC, UCLA sent me, Texas and LSU, and a couple of that. But I knew Alan Fox and knew his history, so I was really focused on Pepperdine. And that summer, I decided to finish school because I was doing correspondence school, so I needed to have certain amount of credits and graduate from high school. So I came to Los Angeles. Actually, Alan Fox set me up with a coach whose name is Robert Lansdorf, and I used to practice with him here in LA in Palos Verdes. It was called the Western Tennis Club. Pete Sampras was practicing there. He was younger than me.
Wow.
Jeff Durango. We had very good girls. Her name was Stephanie Rehi, Melissa Gurney, Stella Sampras was there. So we had a lot of players in there that they were really good. And I just did 1 year in high school, and graduated from high school, and I was set to go to Pepperdine.
I guess you mentioned you committed, but given you had such a successful junior career as well, did you contemplate whether you should go to college or whether you should continue playing professional and just go straight to the ATP Tour?
I contemplated in 1984, but in my first year in the 80s, I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that summer that finished, I said, no, I'm going to college. And the other thing that happened is that my mother was a very academic person. She went to Cornell and she wanted me to go to college it was like big thing especially from my mother's family, which is very different than my father's. As I told you, he didn't go to college. He was a professional soccer player. So it was very different. But on my mother's side, there was a huge academic thing about going to college, so Pepperdine was a good school, good coaching, and my mother always knew about the coaches, made research, look at their background, and Alafox, he's a psychologist, he was a great tennis player, and obviously everybody knew about him, and I was set to go to Pepperdine with him as a coach.
Got it. How long did you stay in Pepperdine for?
I played 1 year, and this is what happened. We had a great team.
Yes.
We won the national indoors, and we lost in the finals against Stanford in the NCAA as a team. I played doubles number 1, and I played singles number 4, 5 as a freshman. I started at number 5, and then I got to be number 4. And I went to play my first satellite in Spain, which it was so different. The ATP tour was completely different, And that was a very hard satellite. It was 5 tournaments in a row. It was 1986, and I actually played a challenger before with a wild card, and I won a round in Mexico.
Yeah.
So I had 4 points, back then. So I had 4 points. I got into the qualies of that tournament, and I won that satellite.
Wow.
And back then, you would have some players that were top 100 playing satellites, because it wasn't like now. It was more like challengers, back then. So I won that, and then I played Casablanca. I also qualified. I won a round, and that was like an ATP tournament now. It's right now, like the same one. And I won a round, and I won the doubles. And also in Davis Cup, all the players were older than me, and they were out of college after my freshman year. So, I decided that I could go pro after winning the satellite and winning Casablanca in doubles. Actually, in Casablanca was in doubles. And I had an offer of a travel agency that would pay 75% of all my tickets. And I also had an offer from the close Elese. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yes, I do.
Elese. And so I could afford to go on the tour and also playing Davis Cup. I was in the Davis Cup team. So it was good for me to go pro. My mother was going crazy because she wanted me to finish college and then go pro. But I could afford to do that. I didn't need my parents to give me money, so I made the decision, and I think it was an okay decision. I think my tennis developed amazingly with Alan Fox and the team that I had, but I didn't show up for my sophomore year, and then I just played a couple of years, and you know what? I didn't make enough money to live off, So I came back and finished my degree at TCU, being an assistant coach.
Got it. I do want to go back quickly just to your personal career. You played not that long.
Yeah.
2 to 4 years that you tried really playing the tour, and you have climbed really quickly. Yeah. I don't know if it may have been a little bit different back then, but I don't think it was that different. I know even now, like starting to play the tour, it typically takes years to get players from the thousands or get some points to maybe 500 to 600. And you were within that short period of time, you've actually achieved ranking of being 120 in the world in singles and 40 in doubles. I guess, was it mainly the financial decision that even at that point you just couldn't make it financially, or what made you decide you just need to pivot back and go to school?
Well, what happened is that I played 3-4 years. I did play all the Grand Slams in singles and doubles in the main draw and all those things. Sometimes I got in the main draw. Sometimes I qualified, but financially and actually I was making money in Mexico. if I was from the US, I wouldn't have any sponsors or anything, but it wasn't that much money, that I was making. And after that, in 92, I dropped a lot. I got injured playing soccer one time, and I was out for 6 months with my ankle. So I got a surgery. I came back. I didn't reach top 200 anymore in singles. I tried for a year. I was ranked 200 and something, and I didn't want to just play doubles, There wasn't that much money back then like it is now, just to play doubles. And I know I could have played doubles and be ranked high and everything, but like I said, what am I going to do afterwards? I always had in my head what my mother said, you got to finish your education and that. So I got a job working in the Sports Institute in my state. It's kind of like a political appointee, something like that. I worked there for 3 years. I married at the time and already had kids. And I started coaching. They invited me to be like the, not the Davis Cup captain, but the second one.
Yeah.
And one of the players was David Roditi. He was playing doubles for Mexico. And he's such a good coach right now at TCU in the men. I was traveling sometimes with him. And I told him, one of the things that I regret is that I didn't finish college. Oh, you want to finish college? And I said, yeah, the first chance I have, I will go back. So Michael Center, that was in TCU, he contacted Michael Center assistant coach left, and they contacted me, and I just went. My ex-wife was pregnant with the second baby. I already had a kid. And we just moved to Fort Worth. And I was working as an assistant coach, finishing my degree. I mean, I would wake up early, have coffee. And my second kid, Daniel, was born in Fort Worth in Texas. And they both had a scholarship at LSU and they played college tennis, So
that's great.
So that was good.
Before we jump to TCU and some of your coaching experience, I just want to reflect a little bit more on your tennis career because you had some amazing wins as well. You played in the Summer Olympics, representing Mexico in Seoul. Obviously, Davis Cup, you had some wins against Thomas Muster, Petr Korda, and you played all of the Grand Slams. Looking back, what are some of your top experiences you'd rank? Because I know they can be very personal. Is there one or two matches or tournaments that really stood out?
I beat Muster and Korda, but I beat them not when they were number one in the world or number two. Not at their top. So, yeah, I had some good wins. I also lost to people that were ranked lower than I was, So I think I had a good tennis career. Obviously, back then, if you're not in the top 150, you're not making money back then.
Right.
Now, a little better. I made the semifinals of the French Open in doubles. And yeah, it was okay. Having a good juniors and beating a lot of players, that's why I kind of quit the ATP tour as soon as I could because I couldn't get back in the top 200. It's a little bit like a down thing, and I wanted to get back to college. That was my main thing why I quit. I wanted to work, be more stable in one city. I traveled so much since I was 11 years old, and I played a lot of tournaments in the juniors, and that life.
Yes.
It's a hard life, and you don't have a financial security.
Yeah.
And the thing about my mother was always in my head, so, and I don't regret it. I mean, I'm so happy that I went back to college. It's something that I think I made the right decision. It's my passion right now. I love team tennis. I would love if Davis Cup and now the Billie Jean was more inclusive with more players, instead of players playing, kind of like college.
Yes.
So much more fun when you have a bigger team. So it went all good. I don't regret anything that happened in my life.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I don't regret it. I'm glad the kids and everything. I'm glad that I divorced. I don't regret it, really. It's teaching, it's a teaching about, obviously, you always make mistakes in life. But one of the good things I think that I have is that I don't look too much at the regret of the past.
Yes.
Even if there were some bad experiences, you learn from those experiences.
I agree. I think sometimes the hardest thing in life actually teaches a lesson, and it's really hard knowing that when we're going through it.
Yeah.
But once you passed it, it's easier to reflect.
Oh my God, yeah. For example, myself, I mean, obviously it's not the end of the world or nothing, but like I had a divorce and I didn't have a good marriage at the end, and I wasn't happy with my marriage. I was happy in my life, but I wasn't happy in my marriage. I had my kids, obviously your upbringing, and the best thing is, the perfect family is to have, your wife and your kids, and you take them, to college, all the, everything like that, But actually, I'm so happy that everything that happened.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky that I've done the decisions that I've made. And that's a good decision that I went back to school. I think it's one of the best decisions that I made. Now I've been 23 years in college tennis.
Yeah. Just to note on that kid and divorce, I think taking it from a different perspective and seeing, my parents' marriage, I think sometimes the blessing for everyone is being happily divorced. So I actually think, my mom always say having the two of us, the children, was the best thing that happened to her. But I think for us, from our perspective, is that my mom and my dad are divorced is one of the best things that happened to them. So I can totally see that perspective, how sometimes staying in a relationship can be actually way worse for everyone involved and then deciding to go different ways or separate ways.
Yes. You always think when you're in a divorce that you always think, my biggest worry were my kids. They were playing tennis. Yeah. They were playing good tennis enough to playing ITF tournaments and thinking about going to college, which I'm so happy they did. And you're always thought in the divorce. The only thing that I was afraid is, what if my kids get depressed because I leave the house, not leave
Yes.
them, but leave the house, live in a different place. And is that going to stop them playing tennis? That was what I was thinking back then, But actually, it's fine. I mean, they were fine and they're happy too, and they understood.
Yes.
I mean, at the beginning, they didn't understand, but now they understand and they see me happy. I think the mother's also happy. So I think they're happy. If they see you happy, they're happy.
Yes, I do think so too. And I think being on the other side again of the things, I think parents don't often realize how much the kids feel. Even if things may not be happening in front of them, there's this, I guess, family settings or just this tension or pressure that everybody can feel. And they're obviously very observant. I actually think kids are more observant than adults nowadays. And so I often feel that, making that decision, it's really for typically for everybody's benefit when you're in a relationship that is not functional and that you can't really repair.
Yeah. And then you always live once. I mean,
yes.
And not be happy. It's if you're not happy and you're just don't think about your kids and you're not gonna, because you're gonna hurt your kids. No, do what's best for you. And whatever you do best for you, it's better for the family in a whole.
Yeah, I love that.
You gotta be happy to have happy kids.
Yes. If you're not happy as a human, you can't really make anybody around you be happy either.
Exactly. I feel, for example, even with my players, no matter how good they are or anything, but I can feel when you're around the people, you can feel who's happier than the other one.
Yes.
And who's not having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Even they might be tennis players, but better tennis players, but they're not happier than, you can feel it,
Yeah.
You can feel the atmosphere. So the kids for sure feel the atmosphere of the parents, even when they're young.
Right. My dogs feel that too. So I was like, sometimes it's funny. I think she sometimes know that I'm unhappy before I do know that. I was like, how does she know that I'm not feeling good? I wasn't even aware of it to begin with. But yeah, there's definitely something about mood. And I always wondered, even on the tennis court, I think tennis is a very energy game. And what I mean by that is you can actually sense the energy of the player when one is playing and competing, or even, in doubles. And so that sometimes you can have these surprises that I think one point can very much, in some instances, change the trajectory of the match or the outcome.
It's incredible. One of the things that I do in coaching, there's very simple things about coaching that everybody knows, play to the backhand or play to the forehand, it's weak or whatever. But what I try to sense more is what is bothering your opponent. It might sound bad, but if something is bothering her, I always look, like sometimes a little frustration and somehow, for example, if taking a little more time hurts your opponent, you try and tell your player, wait a little longer, or
yes,
if that frustrates her, or if it frustrates her to move a little bit more to the right, or in front, or backwards, or whatever, that you always try to say that frustrates your opponent. And sometimes the mood, if they're moody, and I always tell even my players, don't let them know that you're moody, or that that you're struggling.
Yes.
Even if the score is you're winning 5-0 and you lose 5-1, and you scream or you do a bad face or something like that, you give your opponent a chance.
Yes.
She sees it, feels it, anything.
Yes.
So it's like playing cards. It's like poker.
Yes.
Put the poker face and not let them know, because you can lose a match. I've had players that were winning easy and just by one reaction, and vice versa. Huh?
Yes.
One reaction, the match changes.
For sure. I've lived through this myself.
What's special about our game? It's you can always come back.
Yeah, I agree. And I've definitely had to learn the hard way, being one that controlling my emotions has always been the worst. It's not my game, but it really depended on how my mind woke up and really getting my mind to the same state. And I think that's actually a little bit of what I was able to achieve and learn through all of the matches that I played in college, is to get this performance mindset. And so I was able to figure out sort of state of mind in which I was able to compete the best and be able to switch to it, that specific match and game, no matter how tired or not tired I was. And so being in that zone helped me then win number of games and really gain confidence. But yeah, that didn't translate to later in my, unfortunately, college tennis career for a number of reasons. But do you have any tips, Coach, on that? What do you tell your players and how to navigate that? Because I really feel that's one of the biggest part of the coach, is almost stop the player from hurting their own game. It's not the other opponent. I think usually when it's the other opponent, that's the better side of the things, when they're really better. But it's almost us being our own enemies. That's what is preventing us from achieving bigger greatness.
Yeah. You gotta really know your players, because everyone's different. And that's a problem that I see in coaches. Some coaches treat everybody the same. You can't do that. Obviously, there's rules that you need to have everybody follow them, and that's fine. But when they're playing matches, some people are different. Some people, you got to be tough on them. Some people, you can't be tough on them like in the court, unless it gets way out of hand, obviously.
Yes.
But like it's very different. For example, my number one player that I try here is I leave her alone a lot. Because she wants you only like in special moments. So I leave her alone. She's a little bit harder to coach, but my two really wants, it's very easy for me to coach her, And 2, 3, 4, my 5, I'm talking about last year,
Yes.
5 kind of moody, and you always leave her until at the end you really go crazy on her, you know. But during the match, it's tough, you know. And my six is also a little bit, you know. And there's always different. There's different nationalities.
Mm-hmm.
We have different cultures sometimes.
Yes.
And that's one thing that I think we gotta understand, that, you know, it's like everybody's not the same. You know, you gotta really find out about them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, sometimes you need time, experience, and everything, but like you can't be the same with everybody. It's just the coaching, you know. Some people are really moody, and you have to leave them alone. Another thing is that players need to make their own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna serve to the backhand and come to the net or whatever. You know, it's maybe on the changeover.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think tennis is getting to be too much overcoaching. You know,
yes.
And when they come in the changeover of in the court, then you can tell them something. But you're not going to tell them unless they tell you, where should I serve? Okay, if they tell you that, you tell them serve to the backhand or slice or whatever. I don't know.
Yes.
But you have to let them make their own decision. At the end is so much better, because if you tell them and you demand them to do something and it doesn't work, that's it of the match. They, you know how it is?
yes. Yes.
I told them the right thing, but she, the point, okay, that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's complicated. It's very complicated. And also the moments. There's moments when if they look at you, you know, you got to go and talk to them. If they look with the eye straight to you, you got to go. If they don't look at you, you shouldn't go up there and tell them something. The important thing is that they feel that they got, I mean, obviously they feel that you're on their side, but is if they need help, go help them.
Yes.
And that's one thing, being in six courts, you know, when they're playing in six courts, obviously have an assistant and everything, but like still, I actually even sometimes I think my assistant does a better job. Really. Sometimes I'm a little more nervous than she is. And my assistant is it's so good at calming down girls.
Yes.
So I just said, hey, I think you got to go right there, you know?
Well, I think it's maybe not even that, but just the matchup of specific players. I wonder if, you know, you're better with coaching specific type and versus she might be better in coaching others, and just reflecting of everything what you shared from my own experience.
Sometimes she's better with somebody.
Yes.
You know, it's not like always you're better. You know, you've coached longer or you were a better tennis player. No, that doesn't work. You know, it's the time, what she needs. It's even she needs one of your student athletes. She needs someone, a friend of hers or whatever in the tennis team, to say something to her, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes it works better. You know, we were playing Santa Barbara last year, and it came down to the last point. You know, Santa Barbara was really good last year. They beat USC and Stanford. I mean, we were very close, you know, and actually we were up 3-2 and lose a match. And my number 3 player is playing, it's winning 5-4 in the third set, you know?
Wow.
And actually the one that just lost went with her and started talking to her, and she did a great job. So there's things like that, you know, and kind of motivate her. And I'm okay with that, you know. It's in Billie Jean King Cup. They're actually traveling sometimes to the same tournaments all year long, and I just see them sometimes. I also like to hear what they, you know, and help me, you know, me tell them things, because everybody's different.
Right.
Some people like you to tell them, come on, you're about to win, just 2 points, do this. And some people hate that you tell them, okay, you just do this, and you'll win. It's weird, and it's just something that not everything works with everybody.
100%.
The women are super emotional. It's super emotional. And when they're playing tennis, it's harder for the women to control their emotions than the men. It's really hard. If you tell, oh, don't put that face that you're worried, with the girls, it's harder. With the men, I think they can fake it a little easier. The women, it's really hard for them, if something's bothering her. I mean, they keep saying, oh, this bothers me,
Yes.
Which doesn't help them, but they keep saying that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was just talking to my former teammate, Sandy, and he coached a little bit the men and women both, right? And you see both perspective as well because you have vast coaching experience. You've coached men and women, Davis Cup or Fed Cup, Billie Jean Club. But it seems like you're really specialized coach on the women's tennis.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing the last 17 years.
Yeah. Why then women's tennis if it's so hard and I've lived through it.
But, what? It was really weird, and you probably know that. I was an assistant coach at Georgia with the men's team when Isner was there. Isner and Flores, and they were going to win it. And the first offer I got as a head coach, it was in South Florida. Gigi Fernandez was coaching back then. They offered me that job. And that year they won the NCAAs. But if I would have stayed, I probably would have stayed in men's tennis for the rest of my life. But they offered me my first job, the offer as a head coach was in the women's side. And it was in Tampa, Florida. My kids were already playing tennis. And I said, oh, that's a great place for my kids to raise tennis in Florida. And there you go. And after that, I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed coaching women. Obviously, there's better human beings in the men's side and in the women's side. But I really enjoyed coaching women. And it sounds kind of like bad that I say that right now, but like maybe before that, I would say I will never coach women,
Yes.
But then when I tried it, it's super interesting. I love the tennis that the women play. Right now, for example, as I'm getting older and older, I used to hit with Isner and those guys. Yes. I don't think I can hit with a guy like Isner anymore. I couldn't hit with my kids afterwards, It gets harder and harder, and I can really play with my players. Yeah. In the women's side. So I can also be a good hitting partner for women. I don't think I can be a good hitting partner anymore for the men. Yeah. There's good things that happen in the women's. Back then, remember the scholarships in the women's, you have 8, in the men you have 4.5, and you have to divide it, and sometimes it's kind of like a pain on who should you give more, and that, in the women's is you can only give fulls to 8 people. Yes. And so there's a lot of good things, and the women listen to you, and they are more thankful. They can also be a little more like, oh, you know what? I'm never going to speak to you again. But I really haven't had that many bad experiences. I think I'm 95%. I have good experience with most of my players. Yeah. It's not perfect,
I don't think you can ever be perfect in coaching. I don't think perfection exists in that profession.
No, but it's as long as there's respect, mutual respect. I really enjoy coaching women, and I think if that's what I'm going to do the rest of my life until I retire. Yeah. So right now, after being so long, even if I do incredible or whatever, they're not going to offer me a men's job. They're going to offer me a women's job because they consider you a coach for women.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
You're the women's coach expert now, coach. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that happened. Yeah, that happened. And I didn't have, I had two boys. I didn't have any girls. So
yeah. So there must have been interesting dynamic too. Have you coached your boys as well?
You know what? It's difficult to coach your own kids.
Yes.
And I never enjoyed it. It's an extra pressure. And I think you can help them. I always help them and giving advice. But the best thing is that someone else coaches them.
I agree. I think it's super hard. I know there were a few players, even when I was growing up, Martina Hingis, her mom traveled and coached her for a long time. I know there's been others, but I think that's very rare and really hard for a parent to play that role. I think ultimately just doesn't work out. And even if it does early on, I think for the benefit for actually both the player and the parent, it's just at certain age, it's better if the two just go a separate path and parent stays parent and the player hires a coach. I think it's a very tough dynamic.
Yeah. No, and you come from the Czech Republic. I'm amazed of how many good tennis players have come from such a little country. I think how many, 8 million, 6 million? How many Czechs are there?
I think it's around 10 now, yeah. But yeah.
It's amazing.
I don't think I've realized
That's something, I think it's, if you put the land anywhere where has been better players in the whole world, if you put like a percentage of the best, I think the land in Czech Republic would be number one in the world.
Yeah, maybe land-wise, I agree when you look at the square footage.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It is interesting.
If there was a light, where has, in percentage of the land where there's been better tennis players, it would be the Czech Republic, I would say.
Yeah. It's actually, Czech is very interesting. The older I get, the more interesting I found it, or I value it way more. But we have like rich talents for like rare things that you find these Czechs in, obviously sport like tennis, but there's, even a few others that we just excel in, considering how small a country we are. Yeah, we have some brilliant pockets of brilliant people. Yeah, but specifically in tennis, even, growing up in Lendl, Martina Navratilova, Sukova, Novotná, seeing all of those play. And yes.
So many, For even Higgins is Czech.
Yes. Yeah, right? She is. I went and watched her when she was starting. She was one of my idols for sure.
Yeah, so many. I mean, it's unbelievable. And still, you still are on the female side. It's amazing. I mean, how many times have they won the Billie Jean King Cup in the last 15 years? Maybe 7, something like that.
Yeah, we have some really great performance. Yeah. I think the men's side is a little bit struggling now to put that team together.
Exactly.
We still have very strong women's Billie Jean Cup teams.
It's amazing. You might have grown up with so many, experiences watching how they, the parents, how they act. And obviously, they say that, like, for example, strict parents, you take the Sharapovas or whatever. That's not the way to do it, I mean, you got to be strict, but it's so yeah. The thing about coaching your own kids, it's super difficult, and I didn't enjoy it. It's too much suffering.
Yeah,
I enjoyed the suffering when I played. I enjoyed the suffering of watching my players, the girls that are playing, either Billie Jean King Cup or college. Obviously, I'm super nervous, but I still enjoy that. Your kids, I don't enjoy it. That was too much. My youngest kid wants to try out the Pro Tour.
Yes.
And especially in doubles.
And
see how he does. I'm glad I got over that. I'm not like, oh, jeez, I want to know the result. How how's he doing right now? That's over. So that's good.
Nice. Yeah, I can imagine only how hard it is for parents, but it's also equally hard for kids. I think I started playing way better when I just stopped looking at my mom and dad, because you can see everything in their face and they're so in that match. And so when I realized, this is not doing any good, you just rather focus on your own game and just don't look at them. It seems to be the better outcome. Even just not having them come to the match, it sometimes turns out better than seeing their emotions. You recently had an excellent win against UCLA at their home courts. How fantastic. Congratulations. It was the first win. Was it the first win for you guys, LMU?
Yeah, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what we did last year, it never happened. It's getting really hard for the mid-majors or major mids or whatever to compete right now, because now it's turning more to be more professional every time. There's cost of attendance and NIL, name, image, likeness, and there's so many things that now it's like, for example, when I'm recruiting, it's not like it used to be when I was with you. You give them the scholarship, okay, that's it. Now it's like, okay, if you go to an SEC school, they give you $20,000 extra. Yeah, it's turning to be crazy.
Wow. Tell me about it. Actually, I'm not caught up because I've been watching, what happened, especially with the football and, that being so big in American. Yeah.
The colleges that have football and have money, or even maybe not a big school in football, but that has a big donor, now you can give extra money.
Wow.
And it's really hard for me to compete against big schools because it's getting harder and harder.
Yes.
And so I'm lucky that I travel a lot to Europe and I found good players. And I know people who help me, recruit coaches and everything from the tour, or, that I know them from ever. And they always back me up and everything. But it's getting harder and harder. Because it's not anymore about, the tennis program at your school. It's about money. We don't even have a football team,
Yeah.
And the amount of money that it's getting to be crazy, and we have no chance, And so what we did last year was amazing, beating number 4 UCLA, and we were 18-2 after the regular season. Wow. Unfortunately, we had 2 girls that got hurt. I mean, we beat everybody except Pepperdine in our conference. We were 3-1 against the Pac-12, going to the conference tournament and to the NCAAs. And unfortunately, 2 of my girls, one rolled her ankle at the end, and we were only 6.
Oh, wow.
That's incredible. We were only 6 players because there were issues with COVID, and one of my girls, the 7th girl, had to go back to Germany, and a girl from the Czech Republic went back. So I was down to 6 scholarship girls and 1 walk-on.
Wow.
And I played the whole year with those 6. So if someone had an issue like rolled her ankle, even if I had an easy match, not such a hard match, we never had an easy match, but I had to play her, and play as hard as you can, I would say, with the rolled ankle. And doubles, they can play a little better because you don't have to move too much, But in the singles, I had to take her off.
Yeah.
After, even if we lost that point, she would take the loss because it wasn't good for her to keep playing, So, there's so many things at the end that happened like that. We were only playing our conference, so I was so afraid of that. And 2 of my girls, they never recuperate completely,
Yeah.
But that happens, it's okay. It's part of the game. So we didn't do too well at the NCAAs.
Yeah, I think the recruiting is always tough, especially what you shared now, even with, I wasn't aware just the financial, offers that even are being given to tennis players that obviously didn't exist during my era.
Yeah.
But even looking back on my own journey and interviewing some of my guests and former college friends and former teammates, I feel like finding a college where the player and a coach really connect and understand each other is much more important. Well, maybe I say it from my perspective because I was, looking maybe for something else and I didn't know even what I was looking for back then. It's easier to reflect now with what I know than when you're in that position. But I do think, especially the people who still want to play and really continue to play and put in the best effort.
Yeah.
Finding the coach and the team player fit is so critical to success.
Yeah.
Transfers may happen, but they're very hard and can be very complicated.
Yeah.
And, through my own experience, obviously. What would you do different? Because I keep, pondering about this, and almost every single interview I have with people who picked going to colleges, especially the ones who even go from Europe, it seems like we just don't know enough how to find the right fit.
Yeah.
It seems to be an issue over and over. What would you suggest players to look for, or how to interview to really validate that fit and to ensure they're not just looking for maybe the best school, what you had mentioned, or financial reward, but they're really looking for something that will help you develop your tennis game and for life?
There's two things that I think it's very important is to know your coach well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's good now you can start recruiting them in their junior year in high school, which is good. And so it's good to know your coach well. That's one thing. And find out about him or her.
Yes.
Find out how they are, if they played the game, their background, so important.
Yes.
And the girls, nobody tries to find out.
Yes.
I think in the US, they do a little better on that. I think that's super important.
I agree.
To do research. Obviously, when you're 16, 17 years old, you don't know those things. You don't do research. I think the parents should help their kids do research. And I feel it's very important to know about your coach. It's really important because I'm telling you, there's a lot of crazy coaches there. I'm telling you.
I agree.
There's very good coaches. There's coaches that are not so good. And it doesn't mean that they were good tennis players or whatever. Some coaches that were a good tennis player expect too much about their players, and they're just doing it for the money. That's another thing. If they have passion, if they like it, they don't have to be nice, but completely nice, but they have to be good human beings.
Yes.
Because there's so many that it's amazing. You find out, all the rules that are making, sometimes they're dumb, but it was because coaches were going the other way, going crazy.
Yeah.
Now there's so many rules that sometimes you say, are you kidding me? They put the rule about the 20 hours a week. There's so many things, which is crazy because people were going overboard and everything like that.
But if the player wants to train more, can they still train more on their own?
Yeah, they can train more, but by themselves.
Oh, they cannot go with the coach anymore. Wow.
No. And I know a lot of coaches that still do it.
Yeah.
For example, I can't do that. And sometimes it's like, for example, when you're not in the season, you can't train them. And that happens because people are overcoaching.
They push too hard.
They push too hard, And so those are the things that are important to know.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's also the psychological thing you got to know, and that happens also in the pros.
Yes.
The difference in pros and in college is that you're stuck with your coach, and you can now it's getting better that you can transfer more. And the other thing that is different in college is that the school gives you the scholarship.
Yes.
And like in the pros, you're the boss. The player is the boss.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
In school, no. Because they are the ones that are giving you the scholarship, The school through the coach gives you the scholarship.
Yes.
I enjoy that part because it's more security as a coach. And I think that you have a little more control on them. But it's like always, you have to have a good relationship and you have to trust your coach.
Yes.
And you have to trust your player.
Yes.
Even if they make mistakes. But if they made a mistake or whatever outside the tennis court or whatever, I like them to tell me, It's fine, and you understand it. I mean, I did it as a player and, you can help them or whatever. Anyways, it's a great job. I mean, I'm serious. As a tennis coach, I think it's secure. It's super nice. I like it that it's a team environment. And you don't have that in the pro circuit. I mean, I would never change my job from here to the pros. What I do is I go to the Billie Jean King Cup, but that's it. And that's kind of the same. It's a team environment. And Juliana Olmos, one of my players, that she's number 7 in the world in doubles, she sometimes invites me to some tournaments with her, that I go with her to Wimbledon, to the WTA finals. But anyways, I would never change my job to go with a professional player.
That's interesting because that's what I was wondering. I mean, with your player and, vast coaching experience you have across all generations in Mexico, whether it's coaching 18 and under women or men 14 and under, and obviously Davis Cup, Billie Jean Club, Mexico's Women's Continental Cup, the Pan America.
Yeah.
I mean, you choose to be committed to the college
team
coaching.
Environment.
Yes.
It's mostly team environment, really. I mean, I've coached some players, but just temporarily, that I'm coming back, my job, my real job.
Yes.
I don't consider that my real job,
I mean, looking back, all of your coaching experiences, what would you value as some of the top highlights?
I mean, the gratifying, obviously, recruiting Isner and getting him to be the player he was.
Yes.
Helping him in the development, at least the first 2 years of his college career. I mean, I did a lot with him and we keep in touch. That's gratifying. Moments, obviously, there's a lot. I had it in South Florida. I had it as an assistant coach in Georgia, TCU, and here at LMU. And there's been moments winning NCAA matches, conference tournaments, beating UCLA here. That was big. There's a lot of gratifying moments, obviously. And it's not that some are better. For example, if I would have stayed as an assistant coach and win the NCAAs at Georgia, it's as gratifying as right here beating UCLA. The difference is because you're expected to, at Georgia, you were expected with that team that we had to win the NCAA. So it wasn't like a huge, here beating UCLA, it was wow, I think it's sometimes even more gratifying. For example, when I came here, the team was the last one in our conference. And maybe they were ranked 200 and something. So getting them to be ranked as high as 17, I think it's even more gratifying than going to Georgia and being number 4 and then being number 1.
Yes.
It's gratifying that you have a team like that is not as good, but you turn them into a top 20, then, it's obviously, and winning the whole thing is huge and everything, but you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
I think the best coach maybe is not the one that wins the whole thing, but is the one that develops the team better.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not recognized, but that's okay. And I'm kind of like a coach that everywhere I've been, I stay a long time.
Yes.
I just don't go hop to another one bigger right away just because they pay you more or whatever. It's very hard for me to leave your players, in the middle of the season. Like I know I would have gotten a bigger job, more paying money after the last season that we have.
Yes.
that I didn't want to leave my players,
Yeah.
And I feel attached to LMU, and obviously I don't know how much longer, because maybe there's some year that I have to go, but and the downs was, I don't know if you know that, but I was fired from USF after winning the conference tournament and being ranked number 30.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, people don't know. And it was because I had a tennis academy, and they changed the athletic director.
Mm.
I was making money and I had my kids in that tennis academy in Florida, and I could use the courts and everything. And a new athletic director came, and he said, "No, you can't do that." Okay. Because I didn't agree with him in so many ways. And it was really strange. And he had even a psychologist talking to my players, and he was looking for me to screw up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's an awful situation to be in.
So, yeah, things like that happen,
Yeah.
It worked out so much better because I still had a contract. I went that summer, and obviously, best player from Mexico hired me. I had 2 jobs. I had a double salary in the summer, and immediately, like, everybody knew that it was kind of unfair. So a lot of coaches helped me get the job here at LMU, which I wanted to come to California because the year before I was a runner-up for the Pepperdine job that Per got, which he had done really well.
Yeah.
So everybody knew that I wanted to go to California, and here I am in the same conference as Pepperdine, and being, the second team last year in the conference, and super happy here.
Yeah.
And it's great because they also let me do Billie Jean King Cup, which in a way is super smart because it helps me recruit.
Yes. I mean, it's just fantastic. I also feel the experiences that you can transfer over, right? Coaching the Billie Jean Cup. And you guys also had a fantastic win in November against Serbia, now preparing for April in Spain. And I'm sure a lot of those experiences actually transfer over to overall helping you and you helping your players develop and become better. Yeah. And then I do want to mention here for everyone that you were recently awarded the Hall of Fame award, Salón de la Fama del Tenis Mexicano.
You learned Spanish,
it was my dad's Spanish for the best captain of the national squad. So congratulations. Well deserved.
Well, it was a nice thing. It is a new thing that they did in Mexico. They connected with me. There was like 500 people there or more. TV commentators. There were a lot of ex-teammates in Davis Cup that were there. And so it was obviously memories, and it was just something great that they started doing it. And it was a week before I went to San Luis Potosí to play against Serbia in the Billie Jean King Cup. So it was good. It was just, it worked out perfect, and it was right after we ended up our fall season. When you say you have bad moments, we were talking about the bad moments at USF. That was a bad moment. So, or my divorce. And that's when I divorced, when I left, things were not well there. Even though we were doing so well, we won our conference. We were top 30. Obviously, USF is also a mid-major. It's not Florida, or it's not Georgia, or it's not UCLA or USC, but I think I was the only coach at USF that won the conference championship twice, because we were Big East, and then we went to the AA American Athletic Conference. So I won that too. And it was great time, but it was a bad moment, and things worked out, and I came to California, where I wanted to be all my life. I wanted to come back to California. It's close to Mexico. I'm very attached to Mexico. My family lives in Mexico. My ex-wife's family lives in Mexico, so my kids are a lot in there. My best friends are in there. We have family house in Puerto Vallarta, in Punta Mita. life it's great in Mexico. So I'm close. I have 7 flights to Puerto Vallarta every day, and I have 7 flights to Guadalajara.
Yeah.
Puerto Vallarta, Punta Mita is the beach town of Guadalajara, yes. And obviously of everywhere in the world. So going that I got fired at USF unjustly, but
you created something better.
It was better, and I didn't even have a good marriage back then. I came here. It's been 7.5 years that I've been here, and it's a new life. It was perfect for me. It was perfect. I mean, I needed to get out of there.
Yes. Seems like you traded the coasts and you don't regret it. That was one of my questions, getting used to from the East Coast to the West Coast. People always, make fun which one you prefer, but it seems like you are clear that California and the West Coast is your coast now.
Yeah. And it's not about the people, but it's obviously I love the weather here, and you wake up and you're always, if you're close to the beach in California, there's never a bad weather.
Yes.
It's never too hot because, the sea, the breeze, ocean breeze is cool. So there's no like hot summers, like hot, never, and there's never cold. Right now it's the coldest, and it's not that cold.
Yes.
And so it's great. The people here are relaxed. Obviously it's more expensive here. So,
yes. I always say you pay the premium California tax for the weather because you get the weather. So that's what the tax is for.
Yeah. But, it's something that I wanted to live here and be close to Mexico.
Yes.
It just happens like that. Sometimes it gets the time in your life that it's very important where you live, even if it's more expensive and you don't make that much money, because obviously a tennis coach that lives in Georgia or even Tampa, even Fort Worth, you can buy a house here. The housing it's impossible.
Yes. It's crazy buying a house in California.
Exactly. Yeah. So I know that I have to rent while I live here, but that's fine.
Yes. I guess we all make our own choices, and I appreciate you creating time for this and this conversation. You have been building a fantastic team and results. So I hope the players do their research and choose not just school, but also the coach and the team, and that will help them develop their game, but also as a human, which I know you do very well. And just before we close, Coach, is there any other words you would want to get out to the world? What do you think people should be doing more of or less of, especially now? I'm also aware of the pandemic. It impacted the college and college sports overall quite a bit. It seems like a lot of rules are changing, that maybe I'm not as close to the college tennis anymore as much as I used to. But what do you see the outlook in?
Well, I think it's very important that everybody pays more attention to the family. One thing, it's super important that you're always together with your kids, your parents, your grandparents, or whatever, or grandkids in the future or whatever. Family is super important. I think it's also very important to always have an education. I think that whatever you do, you keep on educating yourself in life, and whatever it makes you, even if you don't study anymore, you always have to read, or you always have to learn about other countries. Traveling is great. I think traveling is the best thing. That it's what I enjoy the most. Yes. And that's also, I love traveling and recruiting in other countries. So it's great that I have that opportunity. And sports, you always have to do exercise. You always have to stay healthy. I think with COVID and everything, I think the people that did sports all their life can handle COVID better, and not only COVID, the mental part of COVID.
Yes.
I think it frustrates a lot of people. While I was in COVID and lockdowns and all that, I always did my exercise.
Yes.
And I felt good,
I
mentally
agree.
and physically.
I actually got into one of my best shapes I have been during the COVID because you couldn't do much of anything. So I just worked out in my house and had a gym, and I fine-tuned my routine and cleaned up my diet. So I put, focused on everything I could control and fine-tune all the pieces. So I agree. Actually, that was one of my hypotheses, whether athletes or the people who kind of know the structure and what is important to focus on have done better during the pandemic, because you sort of know as a tennis player, right? I think you learn through the game of what you can control and what you can't control. I think that's, especially as you grow, I think that's one of the skills of becoming better. You just focus on the things that are in your control and that you can change and try to shake off and not pay attention to anything that's outside. And so that's one thing I have wondered whether, athletes specifically who understand that rule maybe have done better during this crazy pandemic than maybe others who haven't lived through that experience.
One thing that the tennis players do really, really well, you learn to adapt.
Yes.
Really well. How you adapt with certain tennis players. And it's a good skill, to adapt in the world for whatever happens, I don't think it hits you as much if you are an athlete, and in particular a tennis player. Mm-hmm. And you learn so many things about the game, because I sometimes I think that tennis is like life. You have your ups, downs, but if you know how to handle
100%.
I always look at life, as tennis. I don't know why, it's just something that that has helped me so much, difficult times and this, and
yes,
I can't live without tennis.
I've definitely, had that feeling. It's been a big part. I always say tennis has been really my everything, my life, but also my hate and regret at one point. So I think I've gone through all my stages at this point. But
I don't think you should have any regrets. I mean, thank God you were a good tennis player. You obviously made the NCAAs. I remember that. And you got a degree. You went out of the Czech Republic. You have, you have so many opportunities in life. You still are going to have so many opportunities in life. And tennis was a big help for you.
Yes. And
I think you're stronger thanks to tennis than 99 point. I don't know how, but 99% at least in the world, that you will adapt better than anybody, at least at your age,
Yeah. Thank you.
In life. It's just something that kids and parents and whatever, try to show your kids to do sports, because it's always gonna help them in life.
Yeah. I strongly believe that. I guess I say regret in a way that I don't think I've achieved sort of the goals that I have set for myself, or perhaps the potential that I felt like I could have achieved. And, it was for a number of reasons. But as even now I reflect, and it's more than a decade later after my college experience, I actually even still now realizing all the things that I've learned through tennis. And, without it, really, I think tennis had taught me majority of the things I know and I do now. So I'm definitely more and more grateful for the journey and the people I have met. And, if I could have still one more regret, actually, even looking back and with people ask me, really the biggest regret I have that I haven't taken a chance to transfer. And, that's for a long conversation. Yeah. I think one of the main reasons is that I actually didn't believe in myself enough and in what my own gut was telling me. I was, deciding by my own brain and, my mom, and it's just been really hard for them. Czechs are not people that move very much. And so, being in college only after the first year, and it was actually really great year. I didn't know what was coming ahead for my sophomore, that I'm going to be redshirted. Nobody had told me until I landed back in school in August or September. And it was the biggest shock. And so if I knew that sooner, I would have definitely made a different choice. And really, it's more of
and you would have helped our
my
team
own gut.
but that's fine. No, it's fine, and it's perfect. Like Alan Fox, that I left to play pros, he was so mad at me, and that we didn't speak for a while. But right now, when he sees me, he really respects what I did.
Yes.
And he's one of my biggest mentors still. Whenever I look for a job, he calls anybody.
Yes.
He's a super guy. And, I left him, I left him and, after 1 year, and but things that happened, but I learned, and maybe I would have been a better tennis player if I would have stayed 4 years in college, because I had to practice every day with good players. I needed to develop some kinds of things in my game, but it's fine. Whatever you did is don't look back.
Yeah.
You're happy, that you came to the States, that whatever you did, obviously you're going to do well all your life. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Thank you. And you're going to do well, for sure. Obviously, you're going to have downs, but you're always going to do exercise. You're always going to be mentally healthy and physically healthy. So
yeah. And just on that note, I 100% realize, just even on the sport and the importance of exercise, that's just another thing that really doing something like tennis or any sport, I think, teaches you as an athlete. It's just such a part of my DNA that I almost can't exist without working out on a daily basis. And so I'm just now realizing how that's not everybody in the world is like that. I was like, what? Doesn't everybody know that working out is good and healthy? So I'm definitely grateful, really mainly for the habit.
Remember that I saw you in Newport?
Yes, and we did. I spent the back bay. That was such a fantastic surprise. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it was really fast. I probably saw you a minute, if that was maybe less than a minute, because you were running and I was running.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that was you, because I was like, I didn't know you moved to the West Coast. I didn't expect you to.
My sister was living there in Newport, because my nephews also played tennis. The one that he went to play for University of Denver, and he was doing his high school in Corona del Mar.
Yeah, that's a fantastic area. That's where we used to live. I love that area. So,
yeah, beautiful.
Coach, thank you so much for your time. Maybe last but not least, where can people find you? Anybody who's curious about, perhaps joining LMU or getting some tips?
Yes.
What's the best way to reach you?
The best way is at LMU. Obviously, the website, LMUlions.com. And obviously, email me.
Excellent. If you enjoyed this episode, I want to ask you to please do two things that would help me greatly. And thank you so much for the conversation. Please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcasting platform that you use to listen to this episode. 2, please share this podcast with a friend who you believe might enjoy it as well. It is a great way to remind someone you care about them by sharing a conversation they might be interested in. Thank you for listening.